After my last video about student loans, in which I had really strong opinions about it, by the way, which I will link above if you would like to go watch, I wanted to make a follow-up video in which I would go over how you can work your way around affording college. And basically what I mean by that is I will be providing you guys, basically exposing myself with how I was able to get through my undergraduate and my graduate experience. And this will basically show you how I paid my undergraduate degree in chemical engineering and how I paid my graduate degree in metallurgical engineering. So just to give you a little bit of background based on my previous video. In the previous video, one of my biggest concerns was most people go into fields that do not have an ROI. And on top of that, they go and take really high student loans. So then by the time they're done, they go into fields like, for example, they just get a bachelor's in psychology. You can't really do much with a bachelor's in psychology, right? Unless you have a master's, a graduate degree or a PhD, then at that point, yes, you can make substantial income, but just with a bachelor's, you can't really do much. So you don't have the ROI to be able to pay back the loan. And so I basically said that my point was, if you're going to just do bachelor's degree, right? One of the fields that people should really be going into is engineering and computer science. Because with engineering and computer science, with a bachelor's degree, you're coming out of school and you're starting at a salary of about, mid salary of about $75,000, right? And that's just like, a median / average salary, right? Some people are higher, some people are lower, depending on location and different things like that. And so that was my basically point in the last video. And I know that point can be met with a certain level of resistance because not everyone can do engineering, not everyone can be a computer scientist, and that's okay. I get it. But that was just my point for, at least something that would make sense if you're going to consider taking student loans. So then now in this video, let's move on into pretty much affording college. And my first point about affording college still comes down to your fields that you're going to choose. Listen, I believe it is very important, especially nowadays, that college is very expensive, that the field that you choose, especially if you're going to take student loans, it has to make sense. So then now, let's just assume that you're going to go into a field that, doesn't make sense to have student loans. So what other ways can you go about affording college? Let's say you're going into psychology and just getting a bachelor's in psychology. Let's say you're doing some type of health stuff and you're just gonna have a bachelor's, right? Or social science, whatever that could be. The first thing that I've realized, especially in America with most people, is most people want to go to prestigious schools. They want to go to the private Ivy League schools. They want to go to the, prestigious public schools where tuitions is rocket high. And they go into major fields that don't make sense. I think a lot of people should honestly consider doing community college. That's what I did. I came in America as an international student. My parents sent me out here as an international student. So when I came here, I had a choice to either start at a university or start at a community college. And I did 2 years of community college. The same courses that I took at a community college, all of them transferred when I transferred to university. So basically, as an international student in America, my tuition when I was in university, my tuition was about $16,000 a semester, 16 grand. Sometimes can go close to 17, even 17 grand a semester. That was my tuition. But at a community college, I was paying $6,000 to $7,000 a semester. It's way less than university, where it's 2 point something more than what I was paying when I was at community college. And I got the same education that I would have gotten at the university, but I got it at a community college at a fraction of the price. And now, and I know some people may, say like, hey, this and, community college because people want to go to prestigious schools because the Jones went to prestigious schools. Listen, people, we have to learn, and I understand, young people are easily manipulated, or, easy to follow other people. But you have to have, a brain of yourself, and to be able to sit down and be like, okay, listen, I want to do this. This is an expensive thing that I want to do, for my future. And, you have to be able to pretty much sit down and come to a conclusion like, listen, if I'm going to do this, I have to make the right choices to be able to do this. Otherwise, don't do it, right? And so that's basically what was my strategy. Starting community college and then move on to university. So then now you may ask the question of like, okay, so how were you able to pay your tuition, right? Well, and I know some people may say like, oh, well, you're a rich kid, your parents sent out here and they paid for your schooling. And yes, my parents paid for my schooling, right? But here's the thing. Just because my parents paid for my schooling doesn't mean that, I'm a privileged kid or whatever. No, my parents had to sacrifice themselves to pay for my schooling, right? Which many parents in America don't do, right? Even parents that actually do have the resources to do it, they don't do it, right? And so, we can't sit here and try to make that argument over, right? That's basically how it went. My parents paid for my schooling, but I had to accept to go to the community college to be able to bring the cost down because I wasn't alone, right? There was 2-3 others of my brothers that we were all kind of going through the same process, or some of us had already gone through that and were already done and stuff like that. And so that is step number 1. So then, okay, let's say that you're in community college, and how can you basically go about, finding ways of paying that if, let's say, you don't have parents that can support you, right? I think one of the things that people should really look into is, like, for example, you don't have to take student loans, but I know, especially in America, financial aids, most financial aids, not all of them, you have to read the fine prints, but most financial aids, needs-based financial aids, typically do not require people to pay back that money. So that is one way of basically being able to kind of go through affording college, right? You can use financial aids and work on the sides and stuff like that. So you don't have to go to school full time. You can do part time. You work, you do some financial aid, and you're basically able to cover that. And if it's if it is in community college, right? It's much cheaper and stuff. You could be able to make ends meet over there. That's just one suggestion. And other things are like scholarship but with scholarship, it also depends on, your how intelligent you are, and maybe some luck too, right? It's not just intelligence, right? Some luck too. So then now let's say you're done with community college, right? Or let's say you decide to not go to community college, or you decide to not go the university route, community college, university route. What else could you do? Something else that you could do is you could consider trade schools. These are faster to get through the program, it's cheaper, and once you're done, you can make a really good sizable income. And I know this can be met with some level of resistance. It is what it is. But listen, I would rather go to a trade school where it's gonna cost me much cheaper, take me less time, and get out and make some money and don't have to pay student loans, than go to a 4-year university, owe the government $50,000-$60,000, and then after that, I find myself with a useless degree and I'm not able to pay those loans. Make up your mind. So that's just one way. Community college, trade school. So if you chose trade school, good. If you chose community college, fine. Once you're done with community college, you transfer to a 4-year university. Now, how do you go about affording your way? So then my recommendation would be, first thing first, I said financial aid. Second thing is most schools do have, especially 4-year college do have, scholarships, right? So you can actively apply into scholarships. And I know that may not be enough, right? And so first thing first year, maybe you might want to go to a public school where it's going to be much cheaper than private schools, and maybe go to less prestigious schools, things like that, right? Where you can be able to kind of manage how much you pay, right? So then you have financial aid, you can try to have scholarships. And another big thing is, especially this is something that I saw at the University of Utah, where undergrad student would work in professor labs, has, has technicians or undergraduate researcher, and they get either a tuition reduction and or some type of scholarship, right? And that basically helps with affording college, right? So these are ways that I believe people can basically work around their ways, and at the same time, you don't have to finish your schooling in 4 years. You can stretch it out in 5 years. You can stretch it out in 6 years. Work part time and do this, and go to school part time, and be able to make these. And I know this is a lot more involving because it's harder to work and go to school at the same time. But hey, I'd rather go that route. If I was in the position where if I wasn't in the position where I had parents that would support me at least throughout my undergrad, this is probably the route that I would have gone through than taking student loans, because those will torture you for the rest of your life. Right? And especially if you have a degree that doesn't have a really good ROI, oh boy, that is bad. So that is one way that you can basically go about affording college. So then now, personally, I had that whole part covered. But then once I graduated with my bachelor's in chemical engineering, then I moved on to doing a master's in metallurgical engineering. And guys, I graduated debt-free even with my graduate degree, and my parents didn't pay for this one. And here's how I did it. I basically looked around because, especially in graduate school, most funded programs are PhDs. PhDs are fully funded, right? But let's say that you're just interested in doing a master, right? Most master's programs are not funded. But then I could have done a master's in chemical engineering, but because there's a lot more people in chemical engineering, it's very much competitive. Most chemical engineering programs are not funded. Either they're partially funded or not funded at all. I had a school, I believe this was in Boston, called Northeastern University, that actually gave me partial scholarship, partial fundings, but you had to live in Boston. Boston is expensive and all that, and I didn't want to have my parents to keep paying or keep supporting me at that point, because I felt like what they had done in undergrad was good enough for me that I had now to figure out how to do it in graduate school. And so I had to consider other majors, right? And at that point, I looked into this major called metallurgical engineering, and mostly chemical metallurgical engineering that is very close to chemical engineering. And I found this program. There was a professor at the University of Utah who was looking for students, and he had fundings from the government. And now you can say like, well, I watched your video last week. You were talking about how it's not fair for people to take student loans, but that money is coming from taxpayers' money. So even the fundings that you had came from the government. Okay, I can see the argument there, right? But the difference here is I didn't get that money for free. I had to work for it. I had to provide value. And that is the difference. Because I found this professor who was looking for students, master students and PhD students, to come and work into his lab, do the research in the lab, write research papers for publications and things like that, write theses. So, and at the same time, he needed also students that could pretty much support him in pretty much grading homework, grading lab assignment, running the lab portion class of the course and stuff like that. So I was basically working, I was getting paid a salary, and I was getting tuition, right? So this wasn't just a handout that the government gave me. No, it's money that was given to the professor to be able to use and basically employ students that will provide him the research work that they needed and also the support that he needed to be able to basically also be successful as a professor, as he's teaching classes, and as he is conducting research. And this way, you're able to basically go to school for free. And that way, even though taxpayers are somewhat paid for that, but that money is somewhat being put back and valued into the society. Because the work that I did and being able to come up with new things as an engineer is valuable to society, because those will be used in society to make people's lives better. So even though it's taxpayers' money, should I say, I provided value back for that. I had to work for that, which is different from student loans. Student loans is you just take the money, which is fine if you pay that money back, But then if you have to have the government say, well, you know, we have to forgive you for that. No, then now you were just given an handout, which is different from me actually working for it. So anyway, that's my arguments there. And I believe that is one way that people could go about basically affording also graduate school. If you're just going to do a master's, you have to be willing to maybe move around, willing to maybe change your major, which is what I did. And here I am, I have my master's, I graduated in school, undergrad paid by my parents, graduate school paid by my research. So, I know this video will still be received with a certain level of resistance, and it is what it is. I'm ready for people to call me privileged in the comments, whatever you can think. You're entitled to your opinion, but at the same time, I believe that I still provided you with some value. Some people may find value in this, some people may not. That's okay. That is my experience. I wanted to share it, and I hope that you found some value in it. Thank you, and I'll see y'all in my next video on Sunday.